Hello there, and welcome to Dharma Science Radio, your one-stop shop for the most foundational awareness I can possibly deliver for you about the human design system and the mechanics of the body graph, which is a mapping of the chakras as outlined in the human design system by Ra'uruhu. And so today we're talking about Joe Rogan. And so the first thing I'd like to say, Joe, is that if you see this and you'd like it to be taken down because I'm essentially airing your dirty laundry out for the world to see, feel free to let me know. Perhaps we can have a real conversation about this stuff. So without further ado, let's dive right on in. So the first thing that pops out to me when I'm looking at this chart is the nature of his profile. I see a 5-2 profile. I see somebody who is deeply connected with the projection field, with the definition of a leader. And so the 5-2 profile, this is interesting. We've spoken a lot about the fifth line so far and the nature of reputation, that if the fifth line can deliver and really be practical in what they have to say, that people respect them, that people spread the word of what they're doing and they gain a positive reputation. Whereas if they're not practical, if they're not sharing something of value to the other, then people tend to spread a negative reputation and they become infamous for being, a terrible person or whatever people would like to say about that. There is this notion of burning the heretic at the stake, and that comes from the fifth line. However, here we're dealing with a second line in the unconscious. We're dealing with a natural. Somebody who in their unconscious is simply skilled at what they do. They don't necessarily have all the words to explain every single detail, and yet they're naturally talented and gifted at what it is that they're here to do. There are things that they're not here to do, and they'll never be good at it. There are things that they're here to do, and they don't need to know all the details. They simply get their bearings real quick, and they can do what they're here to do. This second line tends to receive the call from others of, hey, you'd be really good at this. And so the nature of having a 5-2 profile is that both of these represent the projection field. So what is the projection field? I'm sure you've heard about projecting before, like when someone projects onto you their opinion or their perspective of you that may or may not actually relate to who and what you are. And so for a 5-2 like this, their conscious personality is at the top of the projection field, receiving all the positive expectation, and their unconscious design is naturally gifted at what they're here to do. So there's a strong potential to gain popularity and to be well known. And I don't know if you've heard, but Joe Rogan has perhaps the most popular podcast that's ever been alive and ever been running in the entire world. A lot of people know about him. A lot of people are talking about him. And his 5-2 profile plays no small part in the fact of his popularity. And so I mentioned earlier that he's a leader, that he has a design of leadership. That comes down here to the 731 channel defining his direction in life. Now, this person is very different from me. Joe is very different from me. I don't have a fixed sense of direction, and yet he does. It's through this 731, this channel of the alpha, a design of leadership for the good or the bad. You see, it doesn't matter whether it's good or bad necessarily, they're simply leading the way. He's an alpha, You may have noticed that he's quite a strong fella, that he can really lead the way in his own process. And when he is in conversation with somebody, he does a pretty good job of guiding the conversation and leading the charge of what that will be about. And so not only that, he is a 4323 and a 4764. So this 4323 gives the capacity to structure the perspective of reality for those who listen to him. Now this plays a big role with his fifth line profile. His personality as a fifth line, as a transpersonal profile, that he's here with a ton of karma that connects him to other people on this planet. There are tons of people that wait every single day for the next episode of Joe Rogan so they can hear their friend say something. You see, if you have a fifth line or a sixth line in your personality profile, like your sun and earth, then you have genetic connections. You have karmic ties that link you with tons and tons and tons of people that are waiting on you to connect with in one way, shape, or form. Whether it's positive or negative, I can't say. All I can say is you have karmic ties with many people. And this fifth line is the line of universalizing, being practical. And through his 4323, he shares a perspective that influences a great deal of many men, at the very least, with his perspective, because he listens to all kinds of different people. You see, this 4764, the channel of abstraction, a design of mental activity mixed with clarity. His mind is very busy, up there in his head. He's got all kinds of different things he's thinking about, all kinds of different things he's interested in, because his mind is very busy making sense of the past through the logical structure of his leadership. You see, these things are all deeply connected. The fact that he has a sense of direction in his life, and he expresses that through his specific structured perspective. And now personally, there are things that he says that I definitely disagree with. Like, I don't really believe in humans merging with machines like he does. I'm not so big on that. I think that our own biology is beautiful as it is, and we need to learn how to exalt the biology of the human form rather than merge ourselves with the machines we have created. No judgment for those who are into that. It's simply my perspective that differs from his, and I'd love to talk about it more with him. And you see, the thing is that he's a simple split definition. You see, he's got two different halves on the inside of him, like two different people on the inside, one of which is this inspiration connected to conceptualization, connected to communication, connected to direction, that he's got a specific way of seeing the world, and he communicates that, and his body is going in that direction because he's a leader, he's an alpha in his own field, and he's going that way that he sees and can communicate, because he's always trying to make more and more sense of the past and all the various flashbacks and images that are going on in his head. And the thing is it's disconnected from his sacral. His sacral through this 2750, this is a design of custodianship, a channel of preservation. This is about the cold, hard care of the tribe. This is, I care about you because you need to survive with me. We need to survive together. This is not, oh, let's feel really good together, and oh, it's so juicy, and oh, how nice this is, and we can just be fluffy and happy together. No. This is the cold, hard care of the spleen connected to the sacral that's going to do the work to care and to keep you alive. Because I keep you alive, you keep me alive, we stay alive together, and we can go much farther together than we could alone. This is a tribal channel that defines his sacral. And so the thing is that when you have a sacral defined, it means you fundamentally go back and forth between two different things. One is satisfaction, and the other is frustration. Now, see, Joe happens to be somebody who I believe has good access to his own satisfaction. Even though I doubt he knows very much about his own human design, if anything at all, I do believe he trusts his body, at least to some degree, because you can see it on him. I can see it on him, that he looks relaxed. He looks chilled out. He doesn't look really stressed. He doesn't look like he's extremely busy under the pressure. Because the thing is he's got these two centers that are wide open with their lack of definition. So if you've listened to me before, you might know that when a center is wide open, meaning that there is not a single gate activated, you see here in the root center and over here in the solar plexus center, there is absolutely no definition or activation whatsoever. Now this means, mystically speaking, in a previous lifetime, in his previous incarnation, he actually mastered the themes of emotionality and of adrenal stress pressure. And so in this lifetime, it's not about him dealing with his own stress. It's not about him avoiding his own problems. It's now about the collective, about the tribe, about the people around him, about the world that he was born into. He learns wisdom around emotions and avoiding problems and confrontation, or going headfirst into the confrontation. He learns firsthand about what this world needs in the face of stress, how to handle adrenal stresses in the world. Well, he loves jujitsu and kickboxing, fighting, all these various things. It's a way of getting into that field of deep stress and, not avoiding the conflict. Instead, he jumps right headfirst into it with an absolute absurdity that I would never do. I'm a defined emotional person, and I would never box or kick fight or necessarily do the Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Like, maybe at the same time, I'm not going to get myself involved in a situation wherein I can get banged around and literally get hurt that can cause mental damage or something like that. I already had, I had a vehicular accident when I was younger that caused its own repercussions within me. So I've had enough of this physical impact. I'm here to stimulate my mind and learn how to greater serve my body to find the deepest satisfaction that is possible on this plane, because so many of us are frustrated and bitter and angry and disappointed at the world. And we don't have to be that way. We can be having a great time here on the planet, and I believe Joe's having a great time, and that's one of the reasons why I'm happy to speak about him.
The biggest problem I was having was getting my head wrapped around all of the content and all of the information held within the human design system. Ian really made it simple for me to engage my curiosity, for one, but made it approachable enough to where I felt like I could immediately get value out of the conversation and immediately start applying things to my day-to-day life, where it didn't seem like some big puzzle I had to solve. It was an immediate solution to something that I was dealing with in my life. How am I going to apply this with any sense of reality? And he made it so simple and so easy that I have now been on another year and a half since that first meeting with him and my first introduction into human design. And it has really given my overall life experience and the quality of my conscious experience a great boost, and overall something I would highly recommend to anyone else that's early on in their years, or even months sometimes, like I was at human design.
I've been following Ian for about a year now, and I got the chance to work with him recently. The way that his knowledge of human design expands when you're in his presence to fit what you need exactly is something that is a joy to work with and a joy to see live in person.
Oh my gosh, this session was so unique because Ian really made it feel like I didn't have to worry about expectations. I didn't have to have a certain outcome be a certain way, and really helped me understand that I could just kind of ease my way into this. And he was so conversational about it that it felt like I looked up and the time had gone so quickly that I wasn't expecting it to be as much value as it was for as easy as it felt.
I definitely recommend getting a reading, getting a chance to work with Ian. He's one of the kindest souls I've met and has a really firm grasp on the information in human design. Definitely recommend.
I would recommend working with Ian for anyone that is wanting to have someone that will be both there to nurture your curiosity about human design and the fun things that you can explore about it, but also will challenge you and push you in a direction that will get you up and moving and using it in your real life. I think more than anything else, if you want to not just mentally know this system, if you want to understand how to apply it and use it and see immediate results, Ian is the person I would recommend for that. I think it is important for people to remember that this is an experiment. It is not something that you can try without trying. Like you can't get the flavor of something unless you've chewed it up and swallowed it, right? And this is one of those things where Ian does such a wonderful job of making each thing that you're experiencing understandable and allows you to apply it with repetition. So it's not just a one-time thing. You learn how to build really good habits and how to build really good ways to honor your own authority in your own life And from there, he lets you go and then you can fly. It's pretty remarkable how well he sets up my overall experience within human design for the purpose of changing my life, which it really did.
You see, here in this undefined ego center, there's a 21st gate. This is a gate of taking control, a gate of biting through. And you know, he is a hunter. He literally goes hunting. This is the gate of the hunter and the huntress. And it's the line of powerlessness, which I think is really funny. This is where the just are condemned to a futile confrontation with superior forces. Oof. So it's not simply his own powerlessness. It's the wisdom around what it means that there is powerlessness on the planet, that there are forces superior to yourself, and you can be condemned to their power, their ability to take control. You know, when he's aiming a bow and arrow at an elk and killing an animal, that animal didn't stand a chance whatsoever. And it's because he's learning around willpower and his ego. He's learned a lot around that. Well, at least a little bit. Over here in the 44th gate that's coming out from the spleen, this is the fear of tomorrow. This is the fear of extinction. And I happen to know that he's a hunter and he likes to gather his own food in that own way and store it and be preserved and be prepared for tomorrow. And that comes from this 44th gate, this fear of extinction and this line of manipulation. You see, this is about how do I actually use my survival skills to manipulate the world around me so that me and my tribe can continue living. And now I mentioned earlier that he's a simple split. This means that there are a few gates that are extremely important to his not-self mind. First off, I'm looking at this 5th gate right here. This 5th gate is a gate of pause. It's a gate of rhythm. The 15 on the other side he has as an unconscious. This is the gate of extremes. The wallflower, modesty as a shield against exposure of inadequacy. You see, he calls himself all kinds of different names, like maybe a lughead or a numbskull. He simply has a really good memory. I've listened to him a little bit, so I know something about his terminology. And so that ability to be modest, even though he goes extreme in what he does, you know, he really pushes it to the limit, and his mind is interested in finding those breaks, in finding those pauses. Now, where can I rest? Where can I pause in between these things? That's really important for his mind, even though he doesn't have a consistent relationship with what that pause is all about. Over here in the 10th gate is his behavior. He does not have a consistent behavior. You might have noticed that when he first embarked into the public sector that he was the fear factor guy. I remember watching him when I was a child as the guy talking about people that were eating all kinds of gross things and doing all kinds of nasty stuff. And then he used to do all this fighting, and then he was doing more commentaries, and now he's stepped back into more of a podcasting zone and whatever else he does on the side. He doesn't have consistent behavior. So if his mind was controlling his life, he would be busy avoiding problems, trying to prove his worth by never taking a break. And you might have noticed that he uploads very often. His podcast has a new episode out at least every week, if not more than once a week. He's always doing something. He's always doing all kinds of things. And a lot of that comes down to this open root. And it's influenced by this hanging 10th gate that would define his spleen to his sense of self and bring the wholeness into his energetic configuration internally. And I think another one here is this 20th gate. This is the gate of right now, that ability to really express oneself right now, to be in the uniqueness of this exact moment. And the thing is if you listen to him, you might notice he's not always quite so focused on exactly the unique potentials in this moment, and that sometimes he gets distracted by what he's interested in, you know? like the DMT machine elves, or some gorilla tearing a person in half, or some wild thing happening, and he's getting drawn into all these different spaces. Because over here in the 48, he doesn't have the 48. He's got the 16. The 16 allows him to practice, to identify with something, to try it out, see how it fits. However, he does not have the 48. So the real depth of what is available is not here for him to have. He doesn't need to have all the depth in the world. And yet his mind really wants to have that depth, which might explain some of why he has so many different people on the show, because when your hanging gate is a 48, you essentially want more and more and more and more and more and more and more depth. How can I pause? How can I engage with behaviors right now that will give me more depth? Now, I believe those are all his bridging gates here. And that sounds a lot like a podcast, right? Like in a podcast, you take a pause, you sit down with somebody, and you discuss your behaviors, and you increase your depth by learning from the other. Those are his bridging gates right there. And he always likes to be with someone else on the other end. This is bridging the gap. This is connecting the internal split inside him. And so that's partially why I think he's probably a pretty satisfied person. He gets his physical exercise, like a good defined spleen. And he gets to talk to all these different people. And that's really what I love so much about these mechanics, is that I can tell a beautiful story about somebody simply by looking at the surface. There's all kinds of details. Like, what is his mutation that he's bringing through? This is something I've not spoken about very much lately. The personality Mars, this is the personal mutation that a person is bringing through on the planet. And Joe here is bringing manipulation as a mutation. How do we actually adjust our behaviors for survival? How do we actually manipulate the environment and the world in order to keep on keeping on? Well, he totally broke free from the old school matrix of working 9 to 5, and he's living on a totally different lifestyle. And it's through his mutation of alertness, of coming to meet, of learning how to manipulate this world and the reality around us. Because it doesn't have to be a negative thing. Manipulation is not inherently negative. It's one of our functions as human beings, after all. And so that's about all I've got for Joe at the moment. Hope you're having a wonderful day. If you'd like the show, feel free to subscribe, like, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Share with your friends. Take care. Bye for now. If you have enjoyed the show and would like to learn more about how all of this applies specifically to you, then kindly refer to the link in this video's description, Private Consultation. Here, we can dive into all of the details together in a recorded call. May your signature vibration of satisfaction, success, peace, and surprise find you in a good way.